For most of his life, David believed loss could be measured in numbers. A shrinking bank balance, a falling stock price, a damaged reputation, these were the things he feared. When everything collapsed in a single day, he thought he had lost everything. But sitting on the curb that night, crying uncontrollably, he realized something far more painful than financial ruin. He had lost meaning long before he lost money. Meaning is what gives structure to life. It's the reason we wake up, the values that guide our decisions, and the purpose that makes suffering bearable. David had replaced meaning with ambition. He confused success with fulfillment and wealth with worth. Every compromise he made felt small at the time, justified by results and rewards, until his entire life was built on hollow ground. Losing money was devastating, but it was also revealing. Without wealth to hide behind, David was forced to face an uncomfortable truth. He had spent years chasing numbers instead of nurturing relationships, integrity, or compassion. His mansion had never felt like a home. His marriage had become a transaction. His success had isolated him rather than connected him. True loss, then, wasn't the frozen accounts or the looming prison sentence. It was the realization that he had been spiritually bankrupt while financially rich. And paradoxically, that realization was the beginning of recovery. Because once meaning is recognized as the true currency of life, it can be rebuilt, even from nothing. Samuel owned almost nothing. No home. No shoes. No safety net. Yet he possessed something David's wealthiest peers lacked entirely: unfiltered kindness. His instinct wasn't to judge the man in the expensive suit crying on the sidewalk. It wasn't to ask for money or walk away. His instinct was to ask a simple, human question: are you okay? This moment reveals a powerful truth: kindness is not produced by comfort or abundance. In fact, it often grows strongest in those who know suffering firsthand. Samuel had lost his mother, stability, and security, yet he still chose compassion. His kindness wasn't strategic or performative, it was natural, inherited from love and loss rather than privilege. In contrast, David's world had been full of resources but empty of warmth. His colleagues were polished but predatory. Relationships were transactional. Affection was conditional. Money insulated him from pain but also from humanity. Samuel, with nothing to lose, gave freely what David had been starving for. Kindness costs nothing, but its impact is immeasurable. A hug from a homeless child dismantled years of arrogance and emotional numbness. It proved that wealth doesn't make someone generous, character does. And that the greatest gifts are often delivered by the hands we least expect. David believed he deserved what was happening to him. He had broken laws, hurt people, and betrayed trust. In his mind, punishment meant isolation. Shame meant he should suffer alone. But Samuel challenged this belief with childlike clarity: deserving consequences does not mean forfeiting humanity. This distinction is critical. Accountability and compassion are not opposites. Justice does not require cruelty. Growth does not begin in condemnation, it begins in acknowledgement. When people are stripped of dignity, they rarely change for the better. But when they are seen, even in failure, transformation becomes possible. Samuel's words carried profound moral wisdom. Everyone deserves kindness, even when they mess up. Especially then. Compassion doesn't erase responsibility, it creates the emotional space needed to accept it. Without that hug, David might have entered prison hardened, bitter, and self-loathing. With it, he entered humbled, reflective, and open to change, society often believes withholding compassion is a form of moral strength. But true strength lies in recognizing shared humanity, even in those who have fallen. Compassion does not excuse wrongdoing, it humanizes the person who must face it. David didn't need someone to tell him he was innocent. He needed someone to remind him he was still human. That reminder became the foundation upon which redemption could be built. When Samuel said, "You still have your arms and legs," it sounded almost absurd at first. How could that matter when David's entire life had collapsed? But that simple observation shattered David's distorted perspective. It reminded him that loss is relative, and that gratitude survives even in devastation. David had equated everything with material success. Samuel defined everything as love, presence, and life itself. The child had lost his mother, yet still found room for kindness. David had lost money, yet felt destroyed. The contrast forced David to confront how narrow his worldview had become. Perspective doesn't deny pain, it reframes it. It allows suffering to exist without consuming identity. Samuel didn't minimize David's pain, he contextualized it. And in doing so, he gave David a way to breathe again. When perspective shifts, despair loosens its grip. Problems remain, but they no longer define the whole story. David began to see that prison wasn't the end of life, it was a chapter. That loss didn't mean annihilation, it meant transformation was possible. Often, wisdom arrives not from experts or mentors, but from unexpected voices who speak truth without complication. Samuel's perspective didn't come from education or privilege, it came from survival. And it changed everything. Redemption rarely begins with grand gestures. It often starts with a moment of connection, a look, a word, a touch. For David, it began with a hug. That physical act broke through layers of guilt, pride, and emotional numbness built over decades. Human connection reminds us that we are not defined solely by our worst actions. It reawakens empathy, responsibility, and the desire to do better. When Samuel hugged David, he didn't see a criminal or a fallen tycoon. He saw a hurting human being. And being seen that way allowed David to see himself differently. This connection shifted David's trajectory. Instead of focusing solely on avoiding punishment, he chose restitution. Instead of retreating into bitterness, he leaned into accountability. The hug didn't save him from consequences, but it saved him from hopelessness. Redemption is not about erasing the past. It's about responding to it with honesty and growth. And often, it takes another human being to light that path. Samuel unknowingly became the catalyst for David's moral awakening. One moment of genuine connection can undo years of emotional damage. That is the quiet, extraordinary power of human presence. Samuel's final lesson was simple but profound. Every day is a new chance to choose better. It reframed David's future. Not as a continuation of failure, but as a series of decisions yet to be made. This idea is powerful because it restores agency. Even in prison. Even after disgrace. Even when the past is irreversible. Choice remains. Character is rebuilt one decision at a time. How you speak, how you treat others, how you accept responsibility. David couldn't undo his crimes. But he could decide how to face them. He could choose honesty over denial, service over greed, humility over ego. That choice began the moment he stood up from the curb and walked Samuel to safety. Growth doesn't require a perfect restart. It requires a sincere next step. Each day offers that opportunity. And while the consequences of past choices may remain, their meaning can change. David spent decades choosing wrong. One night, guided by a barefoot child, he chose right. And that choice changed the direction of his life, not instantly, not easily, but truthfully.